Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our latest installment of Tuesday Tips. Today we have Rebecca Mead presenting on how to think differently about search engine optimizations. Rebecca, you can go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Haley. Let me share my screen and get the PowerPoint going because this is it's a bit technical, this discussion today. So I wanted to be able to back it up with some slides and then I'll share them later. But thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you, Haley, for having me as part of the series. My aim is to kind of demystify SEO, make you feel a little more comfortable understanding what SEO is, how to optimize your website web presence, and then take those incremental steps to help reposition yourself and solidify your position within the search engine world. Let me just try to move some things out of the way here. And I know I have a lot of things to cover today, and it is rather technical at parts. So I want, please feel free to interrupt and raise your hands, ask questions, pop in, use the chat, whichever you feel more comfortable doing, and we'll get going. So again, thanks to Johanna and Haley for inviting me as part of the Tuesday Tips webinar series. I love working with the Chamber, and I work with the Muse on helping bring entrepreneurial support to Middlesex County companies. It's a great part of my work, and this SEO discussion goes hand in hand with that, because a lot of times we'll get questions from smaller companies asking, how do I rank? How do I compete online? And this is a great opportunity to discuss that. So I know that that SEO can be rather daunting and intimidating because you're playing against the big guys who have big money and lots of resources to throw at it. And it also sometimes seems like it's something that is so technical that you just want someone else to handle it. And I know that Google can intimidate a lot of folks, and I totally understand that. So I think SEO is probably one of the most misunderstood and underutilized marketing opportunities for small businesses, especially startups and people that are, under 10 to 15 employees, that there are activities that you can do to compete against the larger companies and keep your rank visible within the first page of Google. But you've made a decent investment. You've invested in your website, not only time and dollars, but you want that website to deliver business, whether that's because you're selling services, you're selling products, you're an informational website that generates activity outside of off or offline, and you're looking to generate leads, and whatever that lead is defined for your business. So you're supposed to be doing the SEO game, but you kind of avoid it because you find that it's confusing, or like I said, it's intimidating and it's always changing. And it feels like you could be kind of chasing your tail a bit and constantly trying to play catch up. But I hope today that I can provide you with a little bit of a roadmap to help with this and reduce that feeling of overwhelm. And we've broken down SEO into kind of 4 elements. Because I think it seems a little less intimidating if we can have it in just kind of 4 buckets. But before we get into SEO, I have a little SEO joke for you. What's the best place to hide a body? Don't know? That would be the second page of Google, because nobody looks there, right? I mean, how many times do you scroll down the Google page to actually see this option to go to the next page of search results? Probably very few and far between, right? So it's important to make sure that you are found on the first page of Google, that you do everything you can to optimize your ability to be there. And so before we actually get into some of the strategy and tactics, I wanted to give a little bit of like a definition of what SEO is. So SEO is really the art and a bit of a science in getting your website found on the free space. So not paid or promoted in any way, but the free space on the search engines, Google, Yahoo, Bing, and some of the smaller search engines. And when I refer to Google, I'm going to be using it as a kind of an umbrella term, because that's really the master of all. And so your objective with SEO is to increase sales, generate leads, and increase your brand awareness. And to understand SEO, you really first have to understand how the search engines work. They use computer programs called web crawlers, spiders, bots, and they crawl the web, and they're constantly doing this. It's a consistent activity to do. And when they find a new page on the web, whether you've created one on your website or you've just launched your website, they'll crawl it and they add it to what they call the index. And when they've indexed it, that means that they have kind of almost like an old-fashioned Rolodex, where they've kind of placed it in its categories where it's easy to find information. And so then when someone types in something into the Google search bar, they use an algorithm to help pull back all of that information. And they use a lot of different what they call ranking factors to determine which pages get pulled from that index to be shown to that searcher. And the goal of the search engines is really to provide the best possible web page for that search, that search query that visitor is making. And we're not talking websites as a whole, we're talking web pages, because they don't look at your site as a combined entity of pages. They just look as individual pages. And an algorithm is really nothing more than a process or rules that they follow in order to rank and help the visitor solve a problem. So in SEO terms, the visitors' problems are search queries, and they can be asked in what we call short term or keyword search queries, where you might say electrician near Chester, Connecticut. Or they can be what we call long tail, which is when somebody actually goes in and asks a question. And we're finding that more and more people are going into search engines, whether it's generational or it's because of the way we are now kind of trained to use them, and ask the longer questions, like, where can I find a reputable electrician near Chester, Connecticut? Or what's the best place to go hiking with a dog in Middlesex County, those types of things. And so when the opportunity to rank for both keywords and long tail search terms kind of doubles your opportunity. And when you're thinking about it, your main website pages, such as your about page and your main services page, or your home page, can probably, you want to look at for, a search term search result. When you're looking at optimizing for blog content or any kind of resources or things that you might offer up to your audience as a way to showcase your thought expertise and all of your knowledge, you're going to want to rank those and get those situated for long tail, because those are the ones where people will find when they put those those kind of question searches in. And so, these algorithms that the search engines use are constantly evolving and changing, and they keep them rather secret. They will divulge certain things, but they're, through search or through trial and error, we find out things. And so, when you think, God, they're constantly changing things, that can make it feel overwhelming. But it's really important to understand some of the foundational things, because then once you understand that, you'll be able to then adapt as the algorithm changes. And as you learn new technical and content-based skills. Google states that their mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's their mission statement. So how can you, as a business owner or website owner, make your site play by the Google rules and also become useful and valuable to your audience? And so just a little disclaimer before we get going into the main part of it is that, some technical details that I'm going to go through are sometimes best handled by a web developer or an IT professional, just because they involve getting kind of into the code of your website. Plus different website content management systems. You have Squarespace and Wix and Weebly and WordPress and Drupal and all the different platforms. They each handle how they work with SEO and what options they give you to control your SEO a little bit differently. So we're going to kind of address everything as if we have full control over it. And so let's say we're using a WordPress website where we can go in and we can fully determine and dictate what each page in our website will rank for. And so if you work with other platforms or you don't have the ability to set the keywords for it, we can chat offline and I can help you out further with figuring out how to optimize your site in the best way possible. So There are 4 elements that we like to consider, and we've kind of grouped all of the different aspects of SEO into these 4. We have technical, content, and content is everything that the visitor would see, the written and imagery and video and all that. On-site tech SEO practices, and then off-site SEO practices. And the first one we're going to tackle today is the technical. So technical is exactly what it stands for. It's a lot of the back-end work that you have to do to make sure that your site is discoverable by search engines. In order for the search engines to show your web page in the results, like I said, they need to find and they crawl and they index your sites. They use spiders to do that. And there are files and directives, which are kind of bits of code that will allow them to kind of have a little conversation with your site. And your site will say, this is how we want to be crawled and this is how we want to be indexed. There are things called robots text files or TXT files that kind of say, okay, this section of our website's off limits. We don't want to be found for this. A lot of times it'll be like contact pages, things like that. You don't really want to rank for because you don't want to take rank away from other pages on your website. It can be also for things that are behind, like a gated thing, if you have to sign in as for email. An XML sitemap is literally a map that provides search engines with an actual map of the pages and the content that you want to be found on them. So it's the way that your site communicates positively with Google. And it's kind of like your resume. It contains like the high level information that's needed to have that conversation with Google. And it says when your website was last updated and its relative priority compared to the other pages on your site. So is your services page a lot more of a priority for you versus your about page or your, again, contact page or something like that. And then you have things that I didn't include here, but meta directives. So they're really code snippets that live within the header of each one of your pages. The visitor can't see it. You can't see it from the front end. It's just completely readable by the search engines. And it's really, again, this is how we want to be indexed. Here's our keyword. Here's how we want to be found. And this is how we want to be listed within the search results. And then, of course, speed is really, really important. If you have a slow site, if your site loads slowly, it's a really big ding against your site within the search engines and by users. Of course, Google and all the other search engines are trying to be, using AI and the algorithms really kind of relate to websites as if they were humans, right? And because that is the ultimate user of your site. So if your site is slow, we're all impatient and people will back out. And so they'll bounce and you'll have a high bounce rate. You'll also get dinged, by Google and they won't list you very highly. So one way to test that is to go to something called Pingdom Speed Test. You can dump in your main site URL and it'll return how fast the site comes up for people. It'll show you both on mobile and on desktop so that you can see if there's a delay, because with mobile, we're even more impatient. And we want to make sure that we load within 2 seconds, that there's something there that people can read within 2 seconds of landing on your site. Some other aspects of the technical are security, responsiveness, again, speed and mobile friendliness. So how does your site respond both on a large screen as well as a mobile screen? Making sure your site is secure with an HTTPS or an SSL certificate. That's very important because we don't want people's personal information to be scraped or to be vulnerable in any way. And then again, these meta directives, like I talked about, these really end up in the header of every page, and they kind of direct everything that the search engine is going to index on your page. And I know that technical SEO seems a little bit daunting because, again, it does have to deal with things that we're not used to. It's not language we're used to speaking. It's coding, and it's a different way for the website to speak to it. But if something simple that you can do is just make sure that your site is fully secure, that you see that little lock button next to your URL in the browser bar. Make sure that you see that, meaning that every asset and every point on that website is secure. That's a great way to start. Then you can go and you can do that speed test and check to see if your website is fast. If it's not fast, kind of figure out how to make it faster, reduce image sizes, compress those images so that they load quickly. Don't have large attachments on the website, things like that. Sometimes your content management system will also dictate how fast your site is. So if you're, things like sometimes the proprietary website builders are a little slower than folks like WordPress and Drupal and the open source software. So that could be a consideration, but there are ways to maximize your speed. And I'll get into some tools toward the end that we can use. So, and then the last little bit of technical SEO is really the site structure. So how is your site built? What's the kind of hierarchy of the site of priority pages, child pages, grandchild pages, and such that that your site is being seen as by the search engine. So if you think of it as a kind of a pyramid where your domain, your home page is at the very, very top, then you have some priority pages, your main navigation pages, then you have clickable child pages underneath that, and then some grandchild pages. But you really want it to look like a pyramid and not an inverted pyramid, because you want the priority information to be front and center, and those are the pages that Google will index first. I think the easiest component to handle is your content. So everything that's written and images and video and everything that's on your site. Those are some of the easiest things as the website owner for you to manage so that Google will rank it highly. Of course, you want quality, well-written content. Content's been the backbone of SEO since the very beginning of the websites and Google and search engines. And content means, like I said, text, images, videos, tables, PDFs, everything that's accessible on your website. They do extract meaning. They do look for keywords throughout that. So having high quality, well-written, valuable content for your visitor is a number one. Of course, keywords, and we can get deep into the mud about what keyword research and things like that, but really think about making sure that you're including phrases and terms in your website that help define who you are, that people would search for. So if you're a photographer, you're going to making sure that that the content in the pages includes key terms such as family photographer, wedding photographer, headshot photography, things like that people are actually searching for. Because then Google will say, oh, someone's searching for a headshot photographer, and their IP address is in Haddam, Connecticut. So I'm going to make sure that I return Walt's website first, because it's the most relevant and it's the most local to the searcher as well.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
So the keywords, like you just said, family photographer, pet photographer, they would be on the individual pages, though, correct? Like, so if I have a family page, I'd have the keywords on that page. If I have a pet page, then I put those words on the individual page.
Exactly.
Not lumped together as one.
No, exactly. So if you want to be found for individual types of photography services, you want to make sure you have pages that are specific to that one service. Yep. Independent pages, because you can rank pages by independent key terms or phrases, but you don't want to have multiple keywords on the same page. You don't want to try to rank for multiple keywords on the same page. So you may have, photography services being the number one keyword, where you have a landing page just about your photography, and then people can go to those individual service pages, and those pages themselves you would maximize to rank. You don't want to do keyword stuffing either. You don't want to overuse the term or the phrase, because Google will go, hey, we know something, that's not how people speak normally. That's not how people read normally. So they look at it a little suspect.
What about keywords for towns? I actually saw another photographer do a different page for each surrounding town. They were identical pages, except for the town was different. Does that actually help, having another page for each town?
It can, if the person is searching for, headshot photography in Chester, Connecticut versus Haddam, Connecticut. If they are simply searching, for headshot photography, and you rank highly because, you have a lot of additional ranking factors on the page and on your website, then you will still rank higher than they will, even though they may have a landing page for each individual town. It's not a bad idea, but it can also dilute your message a little bit.
Right.
I would say, look at landing pages specific for an offering and specific for maybe a campaign that you're doing. So if you're specifically targeting people in Haddam, Connecticut for headshots, then you want to have a page that is, headshots Haddam, Connecticut, that type of thing.
Would Google penalize you if you had 3 different pages that were identical? Just one was Essex, one was Haddam, one was Chester.
They won't penalize you per se, but they would probably, they'll rank one higher, so they will get confused as to what your priority is. You can, and so, if, let's say you're partnering with somebody and they have a link from your website, from their website to yours, specifically about services for Haddam, Connecticut, then you want to make sure that, you do have a page specific to that offering, because that backlink is going to be a ranking factor as well. But you don't want your pages to compete with each other either, because that'll confuse Google.
Thank you.
Sure. So additional things that you want to look at in your content, excuse me, is also recency. How often is it updated? Is it fresh information? The more stagnant it gets, the worse it gets. You want to make sure that you're constantly updating your site. And when you have an XML sitemap that is connected with Google, then every time you publish something new or update a new page, an existing page, it'll ping Google and say, hey, look, we got some new content, please come index that. So that's a nice connection to have. Of course, the type of content is important, because that's important to the visitor. So make sure that it's relevant to what you're speaking about, that you have a nice combination of text, images, videos, that your page layout is very welcoming, and that people can easily navigate through to what they're looking for, and that your call to action on those pages is aligned with your keywords as well. You don't want them to, your keyword to be headshot photography, Haddam, Connecticut, and then you're asking them to book a dog washing service with you. You don't want to make sure that your everything is very relevant. And then, of course, the relevancy of the overall page to what people are searching for. Again, doing some research to find out what people are searching for, and the competition level for those keywords is important before you start your ranking for those pages, because you want to see who else is ranking for them, look at some competitor information and see what they're ranking for, so that you know what your chances are to rank for that. And if it's not, maybe it's not able to rank with right now for headshots Haddam, Connecticut, but what are some synonyms that you might think about? Professional headshots Haddam, Connecticut, student educational headshots, or business headshots, things like that, because you might not rank for just headshots, but you can still be the second one down and still be highly visible for business headshots, and that's really who you're trying to rank for. Some things about keywords, before you start really altering or developing the content for your page and thinking about your keyword strategy, there are some good tools out there, like the keyword planner that Google provides. Now, they look at it from an ad planning standpoint, because they want you to advertise and pay money. But you can also use it up to a certain point free of charge, and you can get some good data back on, how many search queries are there for that key term in your area. What are some trends for key terms, things like that, so that you can get some good knowledge, and then you can take that back and adjust your content accordingly. The planner, again, what people are searching for in relation to different topics. There's a lot of competition for some key top terms. So we had a client a few years ago who was a mason. They do masonry work for houses. And they were disappointed they weren't on the first page of Google for mason within the first month of having their site up. But when you looked at the competition, it's a huge, highly competitive keyword, because you're competing against some of the even bigger firms that are out there who do masonry work as well as other forms of construction. So again, to kind of get creative, try to think of some synonyms or some grouped ways of how people might search for you. Ask your clients, ask your potential clients, hey, how'd you find me? What kind of things would you be searching for when you're looking for my types of services? Ask your network. And those are good ways to try to figure out some alternatives to maybe some highly competitive keywords, but ways that you can rank. And then, of course, look at what your competition is doing. Really important to see where they're ranking, because you don't want to try to compete with them head on if they have a nice, solid, number 1 or number 2 ranking. Think again of those synonyms. And then you can use 2 tools that I love called SEMrush or SpyFu to try to find out what they're ranking for. You can type in their URLs and it'll give you some ideas of what keywords they're ranking for, so that you can be creative. And again, the other part of content is user experience. You can have great content on your website, in terms of value of content. But if the navigation is confusing, if your look is old or outdated, if people don't feel comfortable navigating through your site, if the site's not easy to use, they're not going to find this content. So really think about the easiest, simplest way to get somebody from point A to point B, and that point B being, the contact you or the pick up the phone or submit a form, things like that. When it comes to user experience, you can make the search engines happier by addressing all of these things, having very clear and simple navigation where you can get from point A to point B in like 2 to 3 clicks, so that you're not asking people to do a lot. Also think about how your navigation works on your mobile device, because remember, people don't hover on mobile devices like they do on computers, on desktops, they click. So how do you indicate and make it easier for people to understand what your call to action is, what you want them, the action you want them to take? So now that we know what how our content works, we're going to talk a little bit about on-site. And again, this gets a little technical. And there are ways, again, depending on the content management service that you use for your website, there are ways to manipulate all of this. And, the term optimization is really overused. What does it really mean to optimize your site? I know, but when you're talking about from a site owner's position, how do I optimize my site? Well, it could be, again, like we talked about, updating your content, really understanding your keywords, making your site faster, improving the ease of use on the site, inserting some additional keywords or keyword synonyms into the copy. But the primary ways that you can optimize your site to make it easy for the search engines to index, to scan, to understand your website are these next few things, these big 3. 1, page titles and meta descriptions. So these are where you can go into your website and you can determine exactly what your page is about and what meta description you want to show in the search engine results. So, give people something that they're going to kind of latch onto, other than just, the page title and the link, the URL link that you see when you get the search results. The meta description is really important to influence people's click-throughs. And of course, the more click-throughs you get on search engine results, the more Google says, hey, we're ranking this correctly. They're doing what they're supposed to do. And you have higher click-through rates, which is what you want, because then you get them on your site. H1 to H6 tags are kind of their ways of hierarchically organizing the information on your site. They break up the content into easy to read parts. Think of them as like chapters in a book. If you opened a 600-page book, you'd be like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start. You see all, there's no chapters. You're thinking that's too overwhelming. It's the same when people get onto a website. We scan for information, especially now that we're on mobile. We just quickly scroll to figure out if this is the place that we need to be and is this the information we're looking for. H1 and through H6 tags are different ways of setting the hierarchy to allow people to scan just kind of like subheaders, through the page, or scan those chapter headings and say, oh, okay, it is. So, he does do headshots in Haddam, Connecticut. That can be H1, right? The next one could be an H2, and it could say for all of your professional business headshot needs, those type of things. So people are scanning just to get a little bit more information, and then they'll go back and get into the actual content. So again, it's that way of people deciding whether or not they're going to be on the site. Same with search engines. They want to see that your headers, your H1s through H6, are aligned with your keywords throughout the site, and so that you can, or throughout the page, so that you can, that they know that they're indexing correctly. And then alt text is really important. And alt text is what if you're hovering over a picture online and all of a sudden you get this little like box that pops up and gives a title of it or a description of that photo. That's helpful because Google and the other search engines don't see images or video or anything that's not text on the page in the same way that we do. It's also wonderful for accessibility. And, it's so important that our websites are accessible to people who may have visual issues, may have other types of special needs that come to the site. And when you have alt text, there are tools that can hook onto those and actually describe and auditorily describe what those images are about. And you want to make sure that your alt text aligns with your keywords and the strategy for that page. And all of these can be set depending on the content management system that you use. All of these can be set in the back end. Sometimes you have to add on something that will help you do that. But what this does is if you set that for the page, you're just giving Google the perfectly clear roadmap as to exactly how you want to be indexed. And again, none of these get seen by on the actual, or that obvious to people when they're visiting the page. It just, everything works well together when you have all of these pieces put together. Whoops. Other things that you want to consider when you're developing your page strategy and your keyword strategy is to link from one page to another on the page, not just in the navigation areas, but have internal links back and forth. So if you have a blog post that talks about, a recent headshot session that you did, you want to go back to that gallery page to show that headshot session. Or if you're discussing something like, services for new business owners, you want to make sure that when they've read the content that you have, there's other opportunities for them to learn deeper and to go to different pages within your website. It's a big ranking factor along with external links, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then structured data are some code. And it, again, this comes with a really good, robust content management system, but it really aligns with how the websites are going to see and understand what that web page is about. So, let's say there are some tools that Google will hook to that will, within those content management systems that help to display additional content, like let's say movie times or recipes, things like that. So if you type in, recipe for a chocolate cake, you're going to get a lot of different types of returns. Some are going to be the regular text-based, some are going to be images, things like that. The structured data takes, a good content management system will provide this and takes into consideration everything that's on that page, everything that you've told them to do, the XML sitemap, the H1 to H6, all of those contents, and kind of packages it all together and says, okay, Google, this is what we want you to show out to the world. And the more information you have on that search engine page, whether it's an image or a link to a store or whatever, is one more opportunity for people to find you. So like I said, this is when you see a search result, right? This is your title. So that's a title of your page. So you want to make sure that you're putting in something there that people are going to search for, your keyword is part of the title of the page. The next green line there is your URL. That's the unique address that each page on your website has on the web. And then this is the snippet or the meta description, this gray area here. And this is what's going to grab people's attention because they're going to see this reputation management, the title of the page big. That's usually what attracts them. But then they're going to look down here. And that's what's going to kind of make them want to click through and help them compare you to the next result or the previous result. Site links are opportunities too. The more your site is indexed, the more Google will return it. So again, having a strong XML sitemap, content that's consistently and frequently updated is important because those site links will be added by Google down the road. And then there are these things called searches related to, and it's important too because it will help other parts of your website be brought up through other searches that are related to this existing search that they just did. So if you could, if you're talking about this Reputation X, which is a reputation management system, then people may consider, well, what is it a good system for me to use? You know, they want to look at reviews. So if you can actually have some reviews on your website, it's going to pull that into that next search. So they're trying to make Google and the other search engines are really trying to make your experience so relevant to what you're looking for, because they look at your IP address, they look at your past search history, you know, unless you've cleared your cookies, but they look at your past search history. They look at other things that you've clicked through, you know, where you tend to click within their page results, things like that. And they try to pull it to be as relevant as they can, because again, their mission is to provide you with relevant and useful information. Oh, a couple of little things. So when you're setting these, you know, Google doesn't have a character limit, but they have a pixel limit for some of these. So your title is about 70 characters. So think about that when you're titling your pages. But the snippet or the meta description is about 156 characters. And some of the tools out there will help you as you're developing it, kind of give you, you know, oh, green, this is good, you're in the right zone. Orange, oh, you're either too long or too short. And red, you're either way too long or way too short, you know. So, you know, but think about when you're doing it, how can you maximize people's attention to that 156 characters? All right. Let's see. So OffSite. So this is interesting. So this is kind of the opposite of what you can do on your own website, but now you're taking it and saying, how do I relate to other websites online, right? So links that point to your website from other people's websites are a huge ranking factor within the search engines, because they pass what they consider authority, right? So if you get, you know, a nice mention and a link on, let's say, the Currents website, or you know, Middletown Press, or like here it says New York Times, you know, and it links back to your site, that's a lot of authority that is coming with that. So Google says, hey, they're legit, you know, this is good information, we're going to rank them pretty high for, you know, help them rank high for this. If you also have authority, other authority websites, like for you, Walt, if there are clearinghouses for referrals for photographers, and you get a link on that site and it comes back to yours, that's a good ranking factor too. You want to make sure that it's just the value of that is high. Not that your dog groomer's website isn't a nice link through, but Google's gonna be like, I don't see the relationship between these two businesses, therefore we're not going to rank, that's not going to be considered. However, if you know something that is related to your business is going to be a nice big ranking factor, or a site that has its own big authority. Google Maps are so very important. Google My Business listings, make sure that you optimize that the best you can, really flesh those out. Those are huge refers. They give you a lot of real estate in that sidebar on Google, you know, with that whole area where the, you know, reviews show up. Reviews are also huge. So if you can get people to give you nice 5-star reviews on Google, that brings your legitimacy up, and that's a huge ranking factor. And then of course, social media still influences SEO. So links back from your or others' social media channels is nice. It's not the same authority as a link from the New York Times or, you know, another section on another website, but the more people that link through to your site, you know, the frequency and the number of links that people follow from social media to your site, and then if they go from your site to, you know, from the search results to your site and kind of move around, that's big too. So think about all of the conversion opportunities you have along the way. Let's see here. So here are some tools. You know, because a lot of this is very technical, there are some tools that we use when we're analyzing a site and looking to see, okay, they're not ranking where they want to be for this keyword, or their performance, this page is slow. You know, you watch it load and you're going, okay, bring it up. A couple of things that we use for speed tests are Google Page Speed Insights, and that will give you both desktop and mobile versions, and it will kind of point out some areas that you can improve immediately. And it'll kind of give you, again, links to other ways that, you know, some tutorials about how to do it on your own. Pingdom is a great one too. Just make sure when you're going into the Pingdom test, once you drop your URL and you're choosing a local test site versus like Stockholm, because of course, the more local you are, the better your response is, and that's what you want. You're probably not optimizing for people in Stockholm. Some ways to find some external links and places where you can get, you can approach people. This is a long-term strategy, is getting those external links. Majestic is a great one. Moz is another one. And then Ahrefs and SEMrush are both great tools across the board for SEO, but they really help you find good places to get those external links, so people to approach, to connect with, or places where your site may already have external links that you have no idea about. It's always nice, and it's a great way to say, hey, thanks, for doing that. Looking up for keyword research, which is really step one in this whole, ranking opportunity, which would be the Google Keyword Planner. Again, bring out your thesaurus and think of some good synonyms for those words that you want to rank for. If your keyword is, highly competitive and has a lot of, search results, ideally you want a keyword that has a lot of search queries and is not as competitive. If you can find those are golden, and try to really use those to help, because those will, again, you'll be more competitive for those, and you'll compete. You may not compete above your number one competitor, but you'll be right there with them. And if you can do a compelling meta description underneath that link, you will get people to your site. Check your mobile friendliness of your site. Google has a mobile friendly test, and again, will tell you if there are things that are broken on your mobile site, or if the font is too small, or the pictures are too big, or that type of thing. And so it can help to fine tune your performance on mobile. And then of course, Google tools in general. So Google Analytics, you want to make sure you have some analytics installed to your website so that you can track what happens after people find you in search engines. What do they do when they come to your site? And then do they convert to whether they pick up the phone and call you, or if they, do your end result, your call to action. Google Search Console is very important too, because that console is the one that's going to tell you what you're actually ranking for. That's the place where you're going to go in and you put in your URLs, whether that's your homepage or any of your, sub pages, and it will tell you exactly what your page is ranking for and the amount of search queries that you've come up in, been returned in. And then of course, Google My Business. I can't stress this enough. It's in Google My Business, Google Maps. It's amazing for local businesses, small businesses, whether you are a storefront and have people coming to you, or even if you go to other people, your services take you to other places, or if you're selling a service, even if if you're a local company, selling a product and you're selling products, that's important. And if you're a nonprofit organization, super important to have a Google My Business profile, because it gives you more bang for your free buck, basically, when you get returned in search engines. So if you want people to donate to you, attend an event, become a volunteer, really think about how you can optimize that Google My Business. And then, like I said, all around SEO, SEMrush is wonderful. They have incredible tutorials. So does Moz, actually. They have great tutorials about how to really better understand the SEO game, and how you can get ranked as you want to be ranked for it. So I'll send out the slides after today, so that you can link through and get directly to these sources. But the number one question I ask is, after we go through and I overwhelm people with all of the technical side of this, and we start talking about the planning and those incremental steps that we can take. The next question I inevitably get is, well, how long does it take to see results, to boost my ranking, to go from page 2 to page 1? And my answer is usually, it depends. It depends on a lot of factors, but if you're looking at SEO as a really long-term marketing strategy, even making some simple changes like improving the speed on your website, really defining your keywords, and those types of small incremental steps, they can help. You can see changes within 2 weeks, easy. And then, but the things that you have influence over is your own site. Things you may not are the industry that you're in. The industry that you're in definitely impacts the timing of your results. If it's a hot industry, if it's a time of year where your industry is more, searched for, if there's something big globally that's affecting your industry, and there's a lot of news options for that. Those are all going to be factors that come in and may affect your search term. The commitment that you put to this, obviously, some of it is a cost, a dollar spend, but a lot of it's more about time and investing your energy to produce good content and update the content on your website and making sure that you really know what people are searching for and you're doing that keyword planning and things like that. And then, of course, SEO is iterative. It's something you kind of have to constantly work on. When we work with clients, we work with them ongoing on a monthly basis, where we're going into their site every week, making adjustments, looking for broken links, looking for opportunities to get inbound links from external sites. We're looking for opportunities to maximize and see where we rank and then figure out how to do that. So it is iterative. So it's not going to be, set it and forget it. Unfortunately, it's one of those things because the algorithms always change. People's search queries always change. News cycles change, the seasons change. I mean, everything affects people's searches. So, once you understand it, it'll be easier to do over and over in time. And then you're spending maybe an hour a week on it versus the investment at the very beginning, which is going to be more time consuming. But, like they say, the best way to eat an elephant, right, is to take one bite at a time. So we say the same thing for SEO. Really kind of sit back, tackle one, part of it every week, learn about one area of it every week, and then apply that to your business. Maybe start with the keyword research. I always say that's the best place to start, to know what your competitive landscape is going to be. And then optimize your pages, add those keywords in, look at the opportunities you have to create, your header tags, your H1 through H6, alt tag all your images so that they align and everything like that. And then do your Google profile and, just take a chunk every week, and it will make it a lot easier. And then you're going to see your site ranking higher for what you want it to rank for. And you won't be stuck on that second page of Google. We hope that's our aim, right? So I know this is a lot of information. And like I said, I'll send out the slides after the fact. I also have a little checklist that I use with my clients so that they have a weekly kind of reminder of what to do. And I'll be sending that out as well, but I feel free to reach out to me. And then we have a podcast that I do with a partner, and we have a whole series on websites, everywhere from, imagery and content and design and everything like that. But everything takes in consideration the SEO component and what that does to help you rank higher. So feel free to give that a listen too. So thanks so much. Any additional questions today? I know it's a lot. It's like, drinking from a fire hose all at once. Yeah.
You mentioned about the Google My Business. And I had somebody build my website a few years back, so I can add a photo and do some basic things. I can't do a lot of overhaul. I just haven't gotten familiar enough to do that to the website. But for the Google My Business, I know that the reviews have been very beneficial, and I've made it a point to go out and get a lot of reviews. And I know when I do a search on photographers in the area, I have more reviews than anybody else in the area. So I think, and I'm guessing, I'm asking your opinion, would you agree that the Google My Business I can control more than my website at this point? So the fact that I can control that and I can get more reviews on that, and if people are doing a Google search and the Google My Business shows up, that's got a link to the website. So secondarily, that is helping, correct?
Oh, absolutely. It's helping. No doubt. Yep. Those reviews are great. I would say, like you said, if you don't have real access to adjust the site itself from a technical standpoint, then I would focus on Google My Business, Google Maps, getting those reviews. I would also look at, if you do have the opportunity to adjust imagery and content, to be able to do that too. Make those refreshes happen, and then if you do still have a relationship with the person who built your site, ask them, to make sure that you have Google Analytics installed and that the XML sitemap from your site has been registered with Google Search Console. Those would be the two big areas initially with a web developer to help you do that. Because again, when you have the XML sitemap connected with your Search Console, every time you make a change on your website, it's going to alert Google and by default the other search engines as well. And that's important too. Let Google know that this website is live and it's being constantly maintained. That's important. But I agree with you. I think Google My Business is usually, other than keyword planning, is usually my #1 with clients.
It's something I feel it's easier and I have a lot more direct control over.
Sure.
And I can influence that a lot easier for me, at least, than the website.
Yeah, make sure that, and again, when somebody puts in a review, they're also able to put in, images from the review. So they could upload, the shots that you took of them, or they could, upload something. So it all kind of builds a 360-degree view of your business, and it gives almost like a secondary website to you on Google.
Good, thank you.
Yep, my pleasure.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there's anything. I definitely need to kind of go in. As you were talking, I was going through our website and seeing, like, making sure that it was locked, and noting down that we needed to work on the alt text and some other things. So
Yeah.
I have a checklist of things that I need to start working on and make sure I'm continually updating.
It is. So it's a living, breathing part of your business. If you do find that you don't have you may have a gray padlock instead of a green padlock, you can always go to a site called whynopadlock.com, dump in your URL, and it will tell you that you may have some, insecure content and where that is, so that you can go and hunt and replace it.
We do have a gray one, so
okay,
I'll definitely need to look into that.
And I have a gray lock too. What was that website again?
It's whynopadlock.com. Just take your main URL, your homepage URL, and dump it in, and it will do a scan, and it will come back and tell you what you need to correct. And it could be an image may not be secure. You may have uploaded it and it may not be secure, or there could be something going on with your SSL certificate that you need to talk to your domain registrar about, or or you may have an insecure link from your website to another website. That can happen too. And they go that far because anything that can come in, can go out, and they want to make sure that you're treating everybody's personally identifiable information, and they consider personally identifiable information, even your email address nowadays. That's, unique to you. It used to be social security and address, and of course, credit card numbers and everything. But now they're going as far as saying, hey, security purposes, we're looking at even email addresses now. So yeah, it's a good tool. Saves a lot of headache of having to hunt for it and figure out exactly what's wrong with the site.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So thank you, Rebecca, for
sharing
this with us and participating. We'll be posting this on our YouTube channel as well as on our website, and then I can email it out to the participants of this webinar today. So thank you very much, and
thank you.
We look forward to our next one.
Yeah, stay cool.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.